There's an issue that apparently let's talk.
Okay.
So we're meeting today with planning for you to talk about it, and I'll send you all an update afterward, but I have already emailed the channel. Like, hey, is it already on here? But
Sorry,
you're right. Work from you all.
Okay,
all
right.
Like,
We're gonna get the problem. I'm gonna call us to order and ask Corian all the roll to this. It's not hard as that.
Ben Chambers,
Present.
Tommy Safranek, Zoe McComber,
here.
Danny Yoder,
Here.
Alberry Karina Plum,
Here.
Jessica Dimick, Tanya Schwartzengruber, Lonnie Murray, Charles Proctor, Sandy Shackelford,
Here.
Christine Jacobs, Taylor Lowry,
Here.
Jason Espy, present. Bill Palmer, Mitch Huber.
Present online.
Hi, Mitch. Could you state the reason and location for attending online, please?
Yes, based in Richmond, Virginia.
Wood Hudson, Sarah Pennington,
Here.
Barry Herring, and Garland Williams. I do want to acknowledge that we had Tanya Schwartzendruber join the meeting.
Allow this space. All right, so allow minister to participate remotely. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, and see, Christine has also joined us for the board. All right, next item is matters from the public. Do we have any public meetings today? All right. Next item is to review and accept this agenda. Any changes to the agenda? All in favor of accepting this agenda, say aye. Opposed? All right. This is our agenda moving forward. Next item is approval of the meeting minutes. Any additions or changes to the meeting?
I was present at the previous meeting. It's not listed on the.
All right, so
I was present at the last meeting as a member of the public.
No folks joining us. All right, so with that change to the meeting minutes, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I should probably abstain since I was. All right, the final thing to go on is the slate of officers. At the last meeting, I was nominated to continue as chair, and Jessica Demming will be serving as vice chair. I'll entertain any motion to amend that slate or accept it. Or that officer. So motions.
I move to move ahead with the proposal.
Second. All right, all in favor of moving forward with the slate of officers, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thanks, Gordon. Next item is Gordon.
Yep, the next item is the electronic meeting policy. This is just an informational item. The policy board is gonna re-adopt this item on their next meeting. Just a reminder, the electronic meeting policy has to be re-adopted every year. There are no changes since the last time it was adopted. And just as a reminder for everybody, one of the key items for the electronic meeting policy is that each time somebody is present online, that's a voting member, there has to be an in-person quorum in order for them to be accepted at the meeting as a voting member. They have to have the camera and obviously the microphone on when they're voting to adopt any items presented on the agenda. I think that's, I forgot to mention so the all meetings, the half of the meetings throughout the year can be held virtually, without having any consecutive meetings, being virtual. So if the first meeting is in person, the next one can be virtual, and then the next one has to be in person after that. And you can choose to elect which meeting you want to be, either in person or virtually.
You have a little experience with that with your renovation of the past years.
Yeah.
All right, any questions on this item? Rest of the panel? All right, we can move on to Taylor, talk about the MPO activities.
Alrighty. Thanks, Gordon.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. So to kick off fiscal year 27, this is our first meeting of the fiscal year. We wanted to give you all just a preview of what MPO staff will be working on, so you have an idea of what to anticipate and expect for the meetings coming up this fiscal year. So the first thing I want to walk through with everyone is the printout that most of you have in front of you. If you didn't get one, they are sitting over in the back by where Gretchen is seated. So this graphic is intended to provide just a high-level view of what the MPO is either responsible for or involved with over a multi-year planning cycle. So many of these activities that you see on this graphic are federally required, like the and performance targets, while other things on this graphic are state requirements or local priorities that our staff happen to be involved with on any given year. So one of the challenges of MPO work is that a lot of our major activities don't happen every single year. Instead, they could happen on different cycles. Some are annual, some are every 2 years, every 4 years. Some are more spontaneous, like discretionary grants. And so rather than looking at each of those activities in isolation, this timeline attempts to show how those responsibilities sort of flow together over time and give you all, as committee members, a visual representation of the work that our staff could be involved with during the fiscal year. I also want to emphasize that this is somewhat of a living document. So I'm sure, as all of you know, planning timelines can change, implementation things can change. And so this was just a high level attempt to look from a bird's eye view at the things that we could be involved with over the next few years. So you'll hear in this presentation a little bit later about some of these items. So this is basically how the UPWP is built every single year. We kind of take a big picture look at what are the things that are supposed to be happening in these different cycles and what do we need to program into this year's UPWP. So before I move on from this slide, are there any questions about this graphic before we jump into what some of the activities actually are for this fiscal year?
Are these years calendar years or fiscal years?
These are calendar years.
Okay.
All right, the most immediately top of mind activity for this fiscal year is Smart Scale Round 7. I'm happy to share that our staff did submit 4 final applications for Smart Scale yesterday afternoon before the deadline, but of course our work doesn't just stop at when the applications are submitted. So there will also be additional correspondence between us, OEB, VDOT to answer any questions on the applications. We will have to concur with any comments that they have about the scope as the state understands the project to be. So we will be continuing that work through the rest of the year. Also around this time of year, so in October, OEB will provide a Smart Scale Round 7 update to the CTB. What they typically cover this time of year is how many applications have been submitted, if there were any that were withdrawn, any trends that they have seen, who the submitting application submitters have been. And so once we see that presentation, we'll be happy to share information with you all as well. In January 2027, at that CTP meeting will be where WAPE presents the staff recommended funding scenario to the CTP. That is the first set of scoring results that we will see that basically looks at, here's the order that you should fund projects if you were to just purely go based off how the project was scored, based on its benefits and its costs. Once we see that update, we of course will review that as a team, ask any questions that we have of WAPE staff, and then we would bring that before you all at your February MPO meetings to review, ask questions, and to understand how the process is going. After that, there will also be spring public hearings hosted by VDOT and ERPT in each VDOT district. These were also hosted last year. The difference is this upcoming year, this will also include smart scale projects. And so people will have the opportunity to come and speak at those public hearings on behalf of their jurisdictions. Citizens can come to speak in support or in opposition of projects that are in the 6-year improvement program. And then finally, in June, we will get the consensus funding scenario along with the state's 6-year improvement programs. And so that will incorporate for smart scale projects, anything that wasn't in the staff recommended funding scenario. So the CTV ultimately has discretion to determine what projects are funded. They can reorder the scenario if they want to. They can pull projects in, they can take projects out. And so we expect to see that in June. And I do have an update presentation after this one on smart scale, but I want to pause here. Any questions overall about the smart scale work we'll be doing this year? The next activity that we included in the UPWP for this fiscal year is a benchmarking effort. The purpose of this work is to take a look around at other Virginia MPOs, there are 15 of them in our state, to see how they carry out transportation planning activities. So we all are responsible for specific federally required activities, but of course, people could have different approaches. They could have different ways of doing these. They could have different ways of building consensus with their partners. They could have characteristics that make them unique. Like we have multi-state MPOs. We have MPOs that have different partners and maybe strong airport partners that we might want to see with those partnerships. Like one specific thing that'll be incorporated into this is taking a closer look at committees and public engagement around the long range transportation plan. And so in February, the MPO Policy Board voted to sunset the CTAC committee, but as part of that, they also provided direction to our staff to look around at how other MPOs are doing public engagement and how we can incorporate potentially an ad hoc committee for public engagement during the next LRTP update. So that's captured in here. The next activity is federal performance targets. So you all are familiar, we adopt the safety performance targets on an annual basis. So you see those pretty regularly, but every 4 years we adopt other performance measures in addition to safety. So this year we will also adopt targets for infrastructure condition and system performance. Performance targets sit underneath WAPE's umbrella for facilitating that process. The same organization that facilitates smart scale is also responsible for the state's performance target setting process. And so WAPE leads that on the state side for the CTP's approval. So they provide recommendations to them for options for how they can set their targets for each of these performance measures. The CTP has already approved the safety performance measures for this year. They did that in June. And then coming up in September, they will approve infrastructure condition and system performance for this year. Once they take that action, that kind of starts the clock for us and our work that we do to look at the state's performance measures and understand how our MPO can set performance measures for the coming year. So we will develop those target setting options for committee consideration, and you all can expect to see that at your December meetings this year. So same timeline as safety, but you'll see some additional ones this fiscal year as well. Another thing that's included in the UPWP is doing some mapping work. The MPO actually used to maintain an interactive storyboard for projects in our TIP. So we're looking at bringing that back and additionally doing some mapping for our LRTP projects that are included in here. And then also for the TIP, we have a couple of unanticipated TIP related activities. And so you might recall that in April, the MPO Policy Board approved our updated comprehensive update to the TIP. So that covers fiscal year 27 to 30, and it was due to take effect beginning October 1, because that's on a federal fiscal year schedule. So we've been informed by the state that due to a handful of MPOs having outdated constrained long-range plans, they are unable to submit the STIP, which includes all of the MPO TIP Senate for federal approval. Therefore, it cannot be approved on the anticipated timeline that we originally thought. And so whereas this would have been an activity that should have been completed and done last fiscal year, we have a little bit of extra time. The new timeline is now March 2027, when they anticipate being able to have federal approval for that. And so because of that, there may be additional activities that we have to do to amend our current TIP document, which does have another year in it, but to make sure that all of the fiscal year 27 projects are up to date and scope, budget, schedule, so we can remain in compliance. So I wanted to give you all that update. Any questions about that? And also related to the TIP, every year we do an annual obligation report around the December timeframe. And so that is when we get a report from both DRPT and VDOT that tells us, here's how all of the funds that were actually obligated over the fiscal year. And what we do is we look back at our TIP and we try to compare those two things to say, how much do we expect to be obligated that was included in our TIP document, and how many of those funds were actually obligated according to this report that we get. And so no action is required for that. It is just an informational item, but we do have to post it publicly every year.
Sorry, I should have asked you this earlier when we were on that meeting with MPO. They expect it to be March 27 before they adopt the new TIP or get it federally approved.
Yes.
Will it still be a 3-year plan from that date, or will it
Yes.
still expire at the same time in 2030?
It'll expire at the same time.
Same time as the, okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, we also had bicycle and pedestrian counting activities included in our UPWP to evaluate the feasibility of establishing a count program through the MPO. And so what would be involved with that would be trying to answer questions like what has historically been done in this area. I know the TJPDC at one point used to do recurring bike and head counts. So looking back at more, what did everyone used to do in this area and how could that be valuable again today? Is that something that we want to restart? Previous and existing count infrastructure. I know that we have some counters out there already, some permanent counters. There are some that haven't been maintained, but that are still out there presently. So kind of getting an inventory of what we already have on the ground. Do we have any regional count locations of interest? Like if we were to want to pilot something in the future, where would make sense for us to invest infrastructure in to be able to count those locations? And then of course, what technology options or what use cases would we have to do something like this?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in how we choose the locations where those counts are occurring. And I think that there's been, you know, historically, there's also been some rural locations that are undeveloped as well. I'm thinking of a place like Ridge Road, for example, which is like highly used by cyclists and runners, which would be very helpful because there's debates about the parking signs or other things that are infrastructure. So yeah, I'd be interested to look at like, are we doing it inaccurate? And also, I think engaging the running, cycling, and the community to ask them what are the places that because others should get this.
That's a very good. Thank you.
So you know, Monticello to the trail, there would be another excellent place to
That's great. Thank you. All right, and the next activity is the TDM study. So this has been in the UPWP. This will be the second year, I believe that it's been rolled over, but we still want to complete it. And so the intent of this study was to identify long-term initiatives to reduce vehicle miles traveled within the MPO area, to support sustainable transportation options and improve regional mobility. We also want to let you know that as part of the rural work plan, TJPDC staff have started an update to the rural long range plan, which is the long range vision for transportation and all of the rural jurisdictions of our PDC. Staff have already updated regional demographics and completed a high level commuter analysis for regional travel, but the commuter analysis was completed with census on the map data, which is strictly work related commute, and so it doesn't incorporate any other trips, the medical trips, for leisure or any other reason that people might be traveling. So that's a pretty big gap in that. And so what we want to do, and what was also scoped in the TDM study, was to do a streetlight analysis to look more broadly at all travel, both within our region and outside of our region. What we've seen through the census on the map data is that, yes, a lot of people are coming into the urban core, but a lot of people are also traveling between other regions. And so we're really interested in getting a more granular look at that, and also looking at things like trip length, which streetlight can help us with that as well. And so that information will come before you all this fiscal year as well. Any questions about this fiscal year? Broadly?
Yeah, one, so we talk a lot about smart scale, and we think that we have to talk a little bit more about smart scale. But I'm noticing under the funding programs, we have transportation alternatives and revenue sharing.
Yeah.
Revenue sharing, you can talk about at a very local level. I'm wondering how you are seeing those fitting with your work plan and how we might be able to coordinate those funding opportunities together.
That's a really great question. So the MPO is an eligible applicant for transportation alternatives. I'm not sure if we've submitted an application before, but it's on the timeline because it is something that we're eligible for. Should we be interested in submitting an application? That being said, the MPO also does not have a local funding source per se, so we would not have local match to be able to put up for any of these projects, but we could be involved in the project development and facilitating, helping, Charlottesville or Albemarle apply for some of these. So it's incorporated on here, but we have not applied yet.
Yeah, it might be useful to help us think through what opportunity we have there.
For the funding programs, it says there's, federal competitive funding opportunities. Are there some that you're thinking of adding to this right now, or is it kind of still up in the air deciding about building and
So
projects?
the ones that we have applied for have been billed. We've typically applied for that each year. Safe Streets and Roads for All. We have also been a pretty regular applicant since that program has been announced. So certainly looking to see if that program were to continue and the next federal authorization, if that would be another opportunity for us to submit another application for that, but no concrete plans yet that would be incorporated.
For transportation alternatives, so we looked at nonprofit or the community organizations. Because there may be opportunities where there's interest in the community for solving some tough problems, and maybe there's opportunities to apply nonprofit funding or community funding programs.
It's really interesting. Thank you. We hadn't considered that before. And there is another funding opportunity. I might look at Lucinda for this one, but there was one that was recently announced through an FTA grant also that looks to see if you have built in nonprofit partners into it. I think something like 40% of the budget, incorporating a nonprofit partner to help you planning some of those things. So we've got a pretty good radar on a lot of the funding opportunities out there. It's just figuring out what's the best project and who's the best applicant for it. But that's a really great note.
As a little small thing, I know, for example, the Charleston 10 Mile last year raised money to improve the parking lot over on the Wilson Road that's used by cyclists and runners. So that's a very small project, but it is very important to people. And I think maybe there's other projects like that get the easy wins that could be
We definitely welcome if you have any recommendations that you want to send our way for who those groups are. That would be really helpful.
If I may, I think one of the things that might also be important to be thinking about along the veins that you're talking about is not all of those improvements might make sense for one of these funding programs.
Sure.
Like an improvement for a parking lot, if it's not in VDOT right of way, for example, if it's not on a publicly maintained roadway, it's not going to be eligible. But it also might be there might be more restrictions on it that make sense for the project. So maybe one of the conversations is also, as we're going through some of these studies, to identify some of those other things that might not make sense to be, a funding application through one of the major VDOT programs, but also where there might be opportunities to work with different community groups outside of sort of that, statewide program.
I think that's a good point too. I just want to make sure we decided that there could be other ways to get things done. Okay.
Just looking very briefly at the Transportation Alternatives Program funding website, it says that all projects must be included in the applicant's capital improvement program. So is there an opportunity between now and the next cycle to add items, or would we just be choosing from an existing list of potential projects?
I feel like that might be more of a local question because we don't maintain a capital improvement program necessarily. And so if we were to apply for it, it would be out of either Albemarle's or Charlottesville's. So depending on what systems or processes you all have in place for the timing of when that happens, I think would determine that.
It sounds like if we wanted to go after something in the next cycle, we'd have to ensure it's in our capital program during this budget year.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we need to start thinking about it. Please.
I have one other question about the bike counting. Has there been any goal setting for that project about whether we are focusing on recreational counting or commuter counting? Or both?
Oh, I don't think we've specified.
In the past, we kind of set up at busy intersections, I'd say. I mean, this is in the longer past of 10 years ago. We used to go out and recruit people to stand and log trips. And yeah, it was just like Emmett Ivy corner or West Main, 10th Street, places like that. Just kind of, so I would say it's commuter oriented because it was always done like in the morning and afternoon, rush hour times.
I know this conversation's been going on way longer than I've been in the community to be involved in it, but I know that it's been coming up recently in staff conversations, the commute between the county and the city and understanding that demand for multimodal modes.
I think Tommy brought up specifically one time entrance corridors being an interest.
And I know with the STAR study on 250 and 29, we've talked about ways for folks to get across 250.
Yeah.
And I think one area is that area of Barracks Road, where you have just across the end line, you have some apartments. And so I think there's a lot of people that are definitely commute from that area into the city. The walking, the biking, and so that would be really interesting area to look at as well, because we've talked about that projects as well, about the impact of some transportation improvements on that population.
I think if we were successful with our smart scale application for the Barracks Road project, that we probably would have some before and after data on bike and pedestrian traffic.
But I mean, I do want to say, like, in terms of one of the points that I made in the past, like the separation between the recreational and users and people that are using the commute, for example, is that that line is very thin, because if, like, for myself, if I didn't have a place to run locally, then I would have to get in a car and drive to Charlottesville to find a park, someplace to run it. And so at that point, I'm using the transportation network. And if I wasn't running regularly, I'd have to maybe go to the pharmacy a lot more to get heart medication and diabetes medication and other things. And so I think that you are offsetting, it's still transportation. And so I think that line about what is recreation and what is transportation is something I kind of wish we could get rid of.
I think it's relevant to this conversation in terms of where we select to put limited bike counters, but I don't think that there's an inherent value proposition there about which ones will go.
Yeah, just I think achieving a balance there is good. Like, making sure that, like, we're not discounting a population or necessarily biasing towards one population or another. Support.
I have one more question. And it looks like we'll get to this next year, but what are the other performance targets that we have to update?
Yes, those are for infrastructure condition, bridges and pavement condition, and for system performance, highway and bridge capability.
And do we have anything in our long range plans that sort of, we've done a lot of planning around safety recently, and we have some guidance for how we want to set those targets. Do you have anything in our existing plans that points us to what we should be shooting for those two?
I don't think so. I know the current targets that we have are incorporated in our TIP. And so they are in the 24 to 27 TIP, but I don't think that we have additional planning that would inform those.
The infrastructure condition is largely based on the state of good repair metrics. So, that's not really something that is going to be influenced that heavily, by the MPO. I'm not sure how it works for Charlottesville, but because you guys receive your state of good repair funding. The system performance, I think there might be a metric that relates to this in like one of the metrics that were used in the long range transportation plan, might have been like around travel time reliability, but I also believe that this is just on the interstates, maybe the NHS system, so it's like a smaller portion of all roads.
Something like 12%. Yeah, I think around there, maybe 12% of all the roads.
Yeah, I'll just be curious how we sort of frame the policy decision around what targets we set for those, because we haven't really had that discussion.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. Any other questions on this item?
Quick question on the safety targets. So there's different metrics for measuring safety, and I know, for example, Smart Scale has one that is used kind of expected safety improvement, something like that. Is the actual safety metric itself set by OIP or some other body above the MPO, or does the MPO kind of also have to choose what metric do we use and then what is the target?
Brianna, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so the state is responsible for adopting their performance safety targets. They have to meet based on federal requirements. The MPO is not necessarily held accountable for meeting the safety targets. However, as an MPO, we do set our own targets in support of the state targets.
The federal government establishes what is measured.
Okay. I didn't know if like the MPO had to choose, this is the metric we're using. Okay, good.
We get a really helpful workbook, I will say, that has a lot of formulas and shows us how to build scenarios. Like, it's really helpful. A lot of support that we get.
For walking us through what we're up to in 2027. I think we're ready for Smart Scale.
All right, so Smart Scale Round 7. Officially, all of the MPO's applications went in yesterday. Congratulations to city and county staff who were also working on Smart Scale applications. So I just wanted to provide a brief update of what the final application materials were that were submitted, the final cost estimates. And I do want to preface by saying some of these cost estimates have changed significantly. And so for the cost estimating process at the beginning, it's based on the highest level understanding of the project scope that we had. It's not site specific yet at that phase when we get them. And so by the time we get the full application and when the project development process has gone on a little bit further, there are now site specific constraints and way more detail in terms of project scope that would inform the cost estimate. And so I wanted to preface us to keep that in mind as we walk through these. All right, so I-64 and 5th Street, everyone will be very happy to see this cost estimate actually went down. We are very happy to see that. Went from 44.7 million to just over 39 million for that project. So that's really great news to see that cost estimate go down. As far as things that changed on this final sketch, and these were also included in your packet and full-size versions as a PDF, so it'll be a little bit easier to see those. There was a bus stop that was located in the wrong place on the initial sketch, so that's been corrected. And this one, there was language added to specify the fencing to be added to the bridge, so that was explicitly added to the sketch. And then there were some changes to where the shared use path was at the northern end of the bridge. Sandy, I might ask if you could jump in and maybe explain the specifics of that.
Yeah, so the northern diverge point originally, the shared use path was going to connect, I guess, Paper North is what we'll call it, or on the west side of the bridge at that northern diverge point, and then connect to the westbound on-ramp across there, connecting it, and then there would be a sidewalk connection. The final application has the shared use path going and basically terminating on the east side of 5th Street before you get to that first leg of the crossing across the northern diverge point. The expectation is that there would be a bicycle ramp that is built to allow bicyclists that are using the travel lane in the northbound direction going through the diverging diamond to be able to take the bike ramp and be able to cross the one leg of the crosswalk at the northern diverge point to get onto the shared use path, so that would provide a transition. That was the main change in the shared use path.
I have a question. In the future, if the city were to put in, go forward with this new street, protected bike lane, which would be on the west side of the street, I mean, in the right of way. And then, I don't know, if the county and city decided to try to extend that to this intersection and beyond, is it like, does this foreclose on that possibility of a path, connecting to a path on my directions all mixed up, on the west side of the right of way?
I don't think so. One of the reasons that we don't have it, that we have it on the side that it's on now, is because there's culverts, there's some challenging geographical constraints that would make it more expensive and more challenging to put it on that side of the road. So that's part of the logic for having it on the side of the road that it's not. I don't think there's like a, necessarily an operational reason that it couldn't be on those sides. It's more like just the cost and expense of getting it installed. And I'll also mention that one of the other things to consider is that the sort of longer term assumption that VDOT is operating under is that there will be a median running shared use path across the bridge in the future. So, connecting to the median of the bridge is the most significant longer term consideration to make sure that, when the bridge is reconstructed, we can accommodate bicyclists more comfortably.
Any other questions on this one?
So at the bike ramp is that northern diverge point. I see what is, but that's the end of the street path.
Yeah. If you look at the big one, you can see you see that there's like a little 45-degree angle.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is the Ivy Road on-ramp extension. For this application, the cost estimate increased from about 13.9 million to 20.5 million. And one other thing that I will note for this one is that Albemarle County does have an enforceable proffer from the old Ivy residences for this project. And so the cost that the project will actually be evaluated on will be $500,000 less than that amount because they were able to leverage $500,000 for this project.
One question, does anyone know where the Ravenna Trail, where the alignment is or will be after this development is done, and then after the ramp project is theoretically complete? Like I know I looked at the current map and it shows it going through woods that I think are no longer there because they're building all these homes there, but like I don't think this drawing shows where that trail alignment is, and I'm wondering where it is.
I think Tanya out there, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that I meant to go to the site plan where the development is, I think that shows the realignment
Okay,
of the Ravenna Trail on the site plan.
okay,
Is that correct?
You're right, yeah.
okay.
You're aware?
So, years, where you came for PC, the money up has changed since then. But one point, it went through an elevator between two buildings, which was not great.
All right, the Ivy Road off-ramp extension. This project did not have many changes. The pre-application cost went from 10.7 million approximately to 11.4 million. Any questions on this one?
You would go with the cost on this.
No, not specifically.
This one's not as big as the other.
Mhm. And then for the last project, apologies for the top of that being cut off. For the Barracks Road project, this cost estimate increased significantly. So it went from approximately 21.4 million to over 46 million. And I wanted to take a second just to talk about some of the things that made it that way. The increase in cost primarily was related to two different things. The first being right-of-way acquisition, that was a big driver of the cost along barracks. And then additionally, there were multiple mitigation design features that had to be accounted for because of a historic property that is located just over here, right here. And so to make sure that there weren't as many impacts to it, there were things like burying utilities, putting up, I believe, maybe a retaining wall to be able to mitigate some of that impact for that property that also contributed to some of the increase in the cost here. And previously, there was also a choice lane that was incorporated into this that is no longer in this version of the project that was submitted, because that would have required sound walls to be constructed, which would have further driven up the cost. So that's also different from here.
Taylor, what do you mean by choice lane?
So there would have been an option for continuing coming here, an option for both exiting or continuing. Like drivers would have been able to make that choice instead of there just being like the dedicated exit.
What was the final sidewalk width?
10 feet.
10.
Any other questions, warnings?
What do we cut from this next time?
I'm sorry.
What do we cut from this next time? It's like
Every time I found this.
right.
Yeah.
And so for next steps, so these have been submitted and now we just wait on the additional correspondence and wait to hear back in January. I want to thank everyone also for all of their help on these. I know there have been a lot of emails, a lot of questions, requests to folks, so I appreciate everybody, both local staff and the staff.
Questions on that? Corbett, you want to see the question?
Sure. In your packet, a staff memo was provided, discussing the tip adjustment, by request from VDOT. I do want to mention that, that memo has an error in the title of the summary. It is not pertaining to the Belmont Bridge, but it's actually for the maintenance, traffic, and safety operations category of the grouping project. This is an informational item that does not require any action from either the MPO Technical Committee or the Policy Board. The adjustment states that $1 million will be moved from FY 27 to FY 26. There isn't any information about the projects or what exactly is the difference in the safety and operational maintenance, but because this is a district-wide funding of projects, so it's not tied to any like project UPCs. One thing that we also have to make sure is that we track the changes for this project because it might be affected in the new tip as things move forward.
This is just administrative.
Yep, just informative to let you know that something is shifting in the planned obligations for that project.
Any questions on that? Do you have any items for this?
And I'll apologize because I was not able to get this up right. I do have a PowerPoint that I can share after the meeting. I know we're about schedule. I'll try not to get us back. All right. So our smart scale update for the full cover district, we had 22 applications that were submitted before the deadline. So that was great. We had 9 applications that were submitted within the MPO area. So as Taylor mentioned, over the next couple months, we'll be doing screening, validation, and scoring. OIP takes the lead on that with the district and consultants to provide support. And Taylor also mentioned there may be some coordination back and forth as the screening and validation occur to respond to questions that cannot be obviously did our very best to get things right, but sometimes not familiar with the project, sometimes see things that you don't see when the project goes on. So we'll coordinate all those. And I just want to thank everybody as well. There are a lot of moving pieces. It's a complex application process. I appreciate everybody being responsive and hoping me not have to remember things for more than a day or two of it. All right, so I think as we're wrapping up the surrounding applications for Smart Scale, we're kicking off our next round of studies, which will hopefully continue to develop projects that can be submitted for Smart Scale applications, but also be implemented through other programs like we've been talking about, TAP, revenue sharing, and maybe even some locally or residency initiated projects as well. So this is the list of all the projects within the Culpeper district. Obviously, not all of these apply to you, but I just wanted to include this whole list to give some context that we're coordinating this with the MPO area. We also have to do this on a district-wide basis. I'm also going to mention that the US 29 Airport Road project is on both of our STARS and pipeline lists right now. We're not going to do two projects in the same location. We think that this would be a better fit for the STARS program, but it could be done as a pipeline project as well. We know it's a high priority for Albemarle County. The pipeline project locations have been approved by OIB staff. They still have to be approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. But if we get approval to do this through STARS, we'll probably take it off of our pipeline list and do it through the STARS program. The STARS program we have not gotten feedback on from Transportation, Mobility, and Planning Division yet. So I don't have an update on what those locations are or what is being approved.
Sandy, do you know when you might get that feedback?
In the next month.
Okay.
I feel like I keep hearing it'll be soon. So yeah, so I think that. Okay. So what's next for our planning studies? We are waiting on TMPD, and then we're going to set up scoping meetings with the project stakeholders. This may not be the full list of stakeholders or study working group members that is included in the study, but will be the what I would consider who is probably going to be like the champions of the project, meaning who is likely to sort of be the ones to take the lead on moving projects that are identified through the planning process forward to implementation. This year, Project Pipeline is implementing a phase 0 to solidify the project scope prior to formal CTV approval. So this would be like where we all agree on where the traffic count data should be taken and what the extent is of the project location. From what I understand, STARS is not implementing this, but if we start looking at this process and think that it would be helpful for STARS, we might do something similar for STARS to try to solidify all of these items that are up for negotiation before we bring a consultant on board and have them start collecting data and information. And then we talked about this before. There's a framework phase that will precede the study phase. And this will be the formal agreement by the study working group members that will be participating in the project. All right, I have a lot of slides about the framework document components. We don't necessarily need to go through these in detail, but basically all I did was go through the framework document that was signed for our last set of STAR study and list the categories and sort of the description for those categories. This is information that is all put into a written document that should serve as our guiding structure for how we're going to perform the study. So it's really important that when we get to the point where we are developing the framework document, that we have the right people out at the table, that this is reviewed at the right, at the right level of detail to make sure that we're all agreeing to this, because we really want this to be a strong guiding document to help us navigate through the process. of doing the study, and we want to hold this up as if there are questions, about, can we do this? Can we consider this? It really needs to be documented in the framework document. And this will help everybody sort of make sure that we're moving forward, staying on track, have a shared sense of expectations for what the study should look like and what can be expected as part of the process. There's always a description about the study intent, what the goals are of the study, the needs and purpose. And I want to also emphasize that there are requirements for how a lot of things can be done or what sort of guidance they need to follow. And that is going to be reviewed not just by the VDOT district, but by the project and program managers at the central office levels. Study intent, study characteristics will help us determine what kind of analysis we need to do. Certain types of roadway facilities require certain, reviews of analysis, like if it's on the arterial preservation network, we have to do an alternatives analysis using a specific tool. So that helps us sort of start determining what has to be included in the analysis, defining the study area, establishing the roles and responsibilities for all of the study work group members, determining where and what kind of data we're going to collect, what kind of an analysis period we're going to be looking at. We're just looking at peak hour for your typical commuting patterns, or are there special considerations for midday or weekend peak periods that we need to consider, as well as what is the appropriate future year to use. We will determine how we're going to analyze data and what measures of effectiveness we're going to consider to determine how well the any improvements that we identify will meet those measures of effectiveness. There's calibrations, assumptions, and targets that determine how we are going to calibrate any of our modeling tools that we use in analysis to make sure that they are appropriately representing on the ground conditions. We'll determine how we are going to calculate growth for the future no build conditions. There will be a description on how many concepts and to what detailed concepts will be developed at different phases of the project. We'll have an opportunity to determine if there are any environmental constraints or considerations of the project in proximity to a historic asset that we need to be aware of. We'll talk about our public engagement plan, and then there's a section for any additional considerations. So when we get to the framework phase, I think it would be helpful, to know what to expect as part of that document, and be prepared to have a discussion of it. And of course, we would take any feedback that we get, on the framework document from you all before we sign it, and we'll try to build, agreement and concurrence on all of the components that are within the framework document before we get signatures. So again, this will be sort of how we manage the study and what everybody can expect to follow. And it should be something that everybody can have available and reference, first and foremost if there are questions. So this again is just really high level of background, but wanted to have an opportunity to go through it with you all before we get to the stage where we're kicking off the studies. So any questions?
So talk a little bit about environmental considerations and how you think about things like impact on biodiversity, presence of rare species, and so forth.
It really depends on what is defined in the study. So we can potentially, I think if we follow sort of like the SMART scale process for environmental considerations, we're really looking for proximity to sensitive environmental features.
So you said like the natural heritage overlay.
Correct, like things that are already mapped in a database somewhere, yeah.
Is there opportunities to use local data sets or localities have more granular information about natural resource assets than maybe the natural heritage overlay does, or do they need to work to try and get those integrated?
Well, no, I don't think, I think there could be opportunities, it just needs to be documented in the framework document.
I really appreciate you making it sound, it's very helpful. I guess sort of a fundamental question that I have is, you said you want one project to go in pipeline while the other one's going to ours. Why do we want one versus the other? What do those two programs?
Yeah, so all of the planning programs are going to follow a very similar process in terms of, you know, you're gonna do the same like sort of structure of analysis for them. Pipeline is really more strongly aligned with Smart Scale and V-Trans. And it's managed by WIPI more centrally. So they have like regular meetings that they have statewide for all the project pipelines, and they have a schedule they want you to follow. And there's not the same level of maybe like flexibility. Whereas STARS projects, they're still the program manager, TMPD is still involved, they still do the final approval. But there's more flexibility in how the project is run. It's not as strongly tied to Smart Scale, and the district takes a larger role in managing the project overall. So if we find out early in the process, for example, that there's no way that we're going to be able to do our public engagement plan in time to submit a Smart Scale application, there's a little bit more of an opportunity to build in that additional schedule. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions on this?
Got one question. You mentioned that kind of the framework document will be signed. Who actually signs off on it? Is it like an MPO committee or the local electeds?
There'll be a study work group representative that is the designated point of contact for the locality.
Okay.
Or the organization of that. Yeah. So that organization, however, you all see fit to determine who that person is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on UDOT update?
This does speak to how important that document is.
Yeah.
And making sure really thoughtful about what goes in it, because that will define further down the process. If we say, well, we really need to do this, it's gonna go back to, is that in the so let's go from the beginning.
Yeah, and if there are other people, if you need to talk to, you can have multiple people on the stakeholder committee, for example. We just need to have one designated point of contact. That's sort of like when it's time to sign the document, that's the person who ensures that the framework document does everything that it's expected to do. But if you want to have your communications people, if you want to have like your land use people, you can have other people on the committee as needed for that project.
But ultimately, it's city, county, MPO, and VDOT, or like who's the committee? I guess
that's something else that we determine in the framework document. So there could be transit. We might want to have transit providers there. We might want to have UVA there, depending on the project. You might want to have your economic development, people there, or if there's like a business community, or a school potentially, police. We kind of determine that at part of this framework.
The partners that are identified, sort of that organization will have one person is identified as signing off. So for the one that's at Free Village, we'll have somebody that's both.
And probably yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. We don't have an update in the staff updates, but just the time to ask any questions you may have on the staff updates. All of the materials are in the packet along with the staff report. So if there are any questions on that, we'll open the floor up. And this is also to remind you that we do have homework for MPO ones going forward. In the email that you get with this packet, there's going to be a line every time saying, please make sure you read the staff report because we're not going to dive into it. So you can understand we don't have questions today because folks didn't get to the reading, but in the future, that's what this time is reserved. Any questions on that? All right. And we will move on to our roundtable updates, and I'm just going to go around the room. I'm not going to do it by jurisdiction. So Sam, you went last. I'm going to move on from you to Jason. And you have updates from Jockey.
No, we're still piloting our new mobility one software for ADA service, and it's going so far so good.
That's about it. I mean, it's.
I need to talk to Mike about that. So we got the, we applied, so people are aware, we applied for service extension for midday with Lando Louisa. And for a Green County Connect service. And I believe they were approved. So we just need to roll that out this next year or so. Yeah.
Just a couple brief updates for rideshare. We have officially kicked off the new fiscal year. We are running a carpool contest this month. So anyone who logs carpool trips, whether it's new folks who are searching out those trips, or certainly folks with the board who are already doing that good behavior, are eligible. Each carpool trip gets you another entry into $100 gift card drawing for our region, as well as $100 gift card drawing for the CSPDC region, since we are partners under the rideshare brand. So it's always exciting to start the year off with something exciting, especially after our great momentum from Bike Fun. We'll continue with regular scheduled programming after that. Yeah, so that's really it.
Stephen,
Then the only thing I would add is I want to introduce Kate White as our new Director of Regional Planning and Operations. I think it's excited to have her on board.
Nope. Fun. All right, my updates, I gave a bunch of them about 2 weeks ago to City Council. The thing we're focused most on, my department right now is figuring out what to do with our mobility plan scope. So we are working through a kind of process with that. That's the review.
Big one for the county that I'm doing, we started with the VDOT TMPD with David Cook, started a roadway reconfiguration study on Ringbriar from 29 to Whitewood. Right up Compass Park, and then one on South Panhouse Riverbend Drive up the hill to State Farm Boulevard. These are to be done in conjunction with the paving schedule. They're supposed to be repaved next calendar year. And so we're going to restrict them to add bike lanes and to do some, not practical, but to just realign the roads, that there's actual facilities for people to use. So that's exciting, kicked off not even a month ago, and hopefully we'll have more information sometime later this fall. Just kind of a fast track study. With other ones?
Just to say that we're excited to submit our applications for Smart Scale. We had 4 as well, so glad that is under, complete, as well as we are currently scoping the mobility plan as well, and have been working with the city to find out where we might be able to work together. That's it.
So in terms of counties mobility plan, how can one thing that sometimes frustrates me, I've heard from a board supervisor, whoever's is frustrating thing for us, like sometimes these things come like fully fleshed out with not a lot of opportunity to change anything. How can people get involved earlier in the process to
That's what we're figuring out right now, is our engagement plan, and whether that is board of supervisors, PC, private public individuals, other internal staff. That's what we're working through right now.
That's actually the thing that's we're stuck on that too. Is figuring out how do we make sure that the engagement piece works and is actually keeps the both the feedback from the immediate in the community, and how do we coordinate it with all the other plans that we're about to do so that we're not going out just plan over and over again.
Exactly.
So that's sort of the dance that we're trying to figure out, right? And make people balance that and understand already, I'm very excited. So tell you that's been way so.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned coordination with the city, because I think coordination between those two plans is pretty good.
It's really great that we're doing them at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think the city might be on a slightly different timeline than we are, but Ours, the county will probably take a little bit longer, but at the same time, where we can coordinate, we will.
Yeah, we're looking to make sure that at least front half of our study is coordinated at the same time. I guess the counties and we're using sort of the same existing conditions and shared language so that we're not going giving conflicting information to the public and not understanding whether they're in county or in the city. Or we want to be able to travel in those places. So yeah, it's been a fun effort so far to make sure that we are aligning and that will be successful going forward.
Also, as part of the annual transportation update a couple of weeks ago, we shared an update on the Rose Hill corridor restriping and repaving plan. We did wrap up the collection of public comments on that plan and iterated it into a final version, which is being handed off to Public Works for implementation next summer. You might see some more information come out over the winter about how to use a new piece of infrastructure that we haven't put on the roads in the city before, with a bidirectional bike facility. But that is culminating in the planning stage for us now. On the cat side of the house, more information should be coming out in the next couple of months about realizing some of the frequency changes that council and board of supervisors authorized funding for in the current fiscal year. Looking to make those changes as soon as we can get enough operators on board to literally on board to drive the buses. And then we've got a lot of behind the scenes construction things that are going to affect our road network in Charlottesville. So on the cat side, trying to make sure that we're communicating those detours, particularly for West Main, where a lot of our routes run daily. So that communication, we're working on figuring out how to share it. It's not an immediate impact to us right now, but it will be coming, and we are going to have to see that.
So we also press send on that smart scale application.
Nice. And have been receiving daily emails about it ever since.
It's the calm before the storm. We'll be back in session in about 2 weeks. So students will be moving back, bus system will get back up to its normal running schedule. Beyond that, yeah, business as usual, normal construction stuff going on with y'all see.
You got construction on your ramp in the street up to the corner going on maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when that's supposed to be done. My guess is they'll be trying to get that done before students come back. So I think that, I mean, they'll quote me on that, but it's usually when we try to do this.
Yeah.
Kudos to the city. It seems like they've been in and out of Culbreth Road on their gas line project fairly quickly. So
Well, this sort of thing, second life for y'all.
yeah, that coordination's gone well. We'll continue to swing around towards West Meeting.
Do you know if part of that ramp construction that's happening, that is going to include gates?
That will not include gates. The gates, if they are implemented, would be further west and then up by the library. And I don't have any timeline on if gates are going back in or not, but they're enabled.
Okay. Anything else from BWC?
Everything was included in the written staff update, but a couple things I will pull out. We did send email notification that we did not receive the build grant this year. So just wanted to verbally provide that update for you all. USDOT typically offers opportunities for a debrief meeting. We're still waiting to get the link for that, but hopefully we'll be able to attend one of those this month or next month to be able to get some detailed feedback to bring back for you all. And then the other thing I wanted to pull out was that we, as of July 1, have a new CTB member. His name is Jim Moy out of Mineral, Virginia. And so I included a little link to the CTB website whenever they want to update his bio and picture, but wanted to make sure everyone knew that.
All right, and Mitch, I think you're the last person we're waiting to hear from.
Great. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great.
Great. Pull up my little document here. Yeah, so a lot of it will be reiterating our agency update from the OIP meeting a week or so ago. But just for everyone's awareness, we have some new staff announcements here at DRPT. We have Lauren Breyer, our new statewide transit planner, and Patrick Clark, who is our Northern Virginia Commuter Assistance Program Manager. So we're getting them up to speed and ready to go. We'll also be coming out with new planner assignments with our MPOs here in the coming weeks, so be on the lookout for that. FTA and Federal Highway has approved all our MPO UPWPs, so we were able to move forward with our trams application. There's no updates to our master agreements this year, so we'll just be sending out new contracts in the coming weeks, no later than October, for MPO use and all grants as well. Our update from our statewide TOD study, that's transit-oriented development. The General Assembly directed DRPT and DHCD to conduct a statewide review and plan to promote and identify barriers and opportunities for transit-oriented development for existing and proposed transit and rail corridors. The review will also look into barriers for housing production and economic development potential. The study is due to be complete by December 15th of this year, and then phase 2 of that study will begin in the following calendar year. Round 1 engagement is occurring throughout this month, and then round 2 engagement is scheduled for October of this year. We're looking for any census data and ACS data at the tract level, like population, economics, housing units, land use and coverage data and existing zoning from localities, housing supply data, and then any sort of local relevant reports, guidance, studies, or policies related to TOD. That would be really helpful for the plan. You can send those to me or to Tiffany if you have any specific stuff you'd like to share with the project team. The statewide rail plan is still moving forward. We've still had the engagement to date, as well as our second round of stakeholder meetings occurred through the month of July. Upcoming engagement, we're looking at a second public meeting in September. A second public and stakeholder survey will also be sent out in early to mid-September. We'll host our third and final virtual public meeting in the month of November with a CTP presentation of the final plan this year in December. And any continuing comments can be sent to our PR email, drptpr@drpt.virginia.gov. Our group TAM plan was released on July 1st, our draft plan that is, and we accepted comments until the end of July. The final plan will be released by mid-August this month, and we'll be reaching out to relevant MPOs for adoption and incorporation into their tips. And I believe that's all from me. Any questions?
Will be any questions. All right, well, thank you, Mitch.
Thanks.
Yes.
First of all, we just sent out to the study working group members the draft surveys for the 2 STAR studies. The 49 corridor and the 49 interchange area. So once we get that feedback back on those surveys, we will put together the final survey, and then it'll be about 2 weeks before that back to the public. So we usually look at the end of August, beginning of September. And then the other thing I want to mention really briefly is if you didn't see this already, David Cook has developed a statewide sidewalk and crosswalk inventory that is now available on Virginia roads. So as you're doing your mobility plans, that might be a resource you want to see if it can be useful and helpful. And otherwise, just if you're interested in know about that resource. And the third thing that I want to mention is that we just heard that with the discontinuing the growth and accessibility grant program. I think just for funding reasons, it sounds like I don't know if we'll do something else in the future, but as of right now, the expectation is that program is not going to be available in the future.
That was the gap with studies, like small areas that we get is.
Yeah, to either identify UDAs or to I think that it's one the city used to develop your process for prioritizing projects. I'm here with that too. Yeah.
Are there other opportunities that is expecting for that sort of small area of home?
I don't know anything other than about that specific program.
Thank you for being very patient.
Yeah.
All right, you have matters? Yes, for
I just have a request for the MPO Technical Committee for future meetings. Please make sure you respond to your calendar invites. It's important to us to know ahead of time if we're gonna have quorum, especially for important voting items or recommendation items. So I would appreciate it.
Thanks for the reminder on that. So the next meeting invite that you will see will be for October 6th, 10 a.m. here. I don't see any members of the public here, so we can move on to adjournment. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Let's send that.